right down to the cement pad, and that cement pad was increased. So neither of those properties then qualify for non-conforming use. So we have, again, that bureaucratic loophole. Please, let's close it, and we close it by rezoning. Rezoning the tower and transmitter properties cannot be construed as an attempt to regulate a federally sanctioned enterprise. And boy, is that a problem for us? We're all too familiar with that. Now, of course, we expect to get more money, significantly more money from those properties. And if the landowners were expected to pay the increase, then there might be an argument that we're trying to regulate a federally sanctioned enterprise. But we don't expect them to pay because the telecoms will pay. Now, if we were going to force the telecoms to pay, there could be an argument, a very, very good argument, that we are trying to regulate a federally sanctioned enterprise, but actually they are volunteering. Here is negotiating a cell antenna lease with TELUS. Now, this is Antenna Management, Vancouver, Canada. Under taxes, it says, and I forgot my glasses, so you'll have to, I'm going to squint. TELUS shall not pay any taxes, rates, fees, or assessments, or portions thereof, unless it can be demonstrated that such costs have been assessed as a direct result of TELUS's use of the leased premises. Now, this is a standard contract, negotiated contract, but a standard contract. So the telecoms expect to pay. They're not expecting to be subsidized as we are doing it right now. So what you do in this case then is you close that bureaucratic loophole and you rezone to utility. The municipality can determine how much of a property should be considered a federal site and consequently open to utility zoning. Now, I wrote to Industry Canada because I wanted to find out exactly how much of a property could be determined to be a federal site. And Jim Larson from Industry Canada got back to me. And he said, look at the Radio Communications Act definitions, because there you'll find it. And this is what it states: that a federal site is all the property within the confines of supporting guy wires as well as ancillary buildings. So we know then, we can determine exactly what the space is, what the space is in order to rezone. So let us close that bureaucratic loophole and rezone to utility. The municipality can apply different rates to different kinds of property. The Supreme Court of Canada, in a decision 7-0, in a decision in January 2012, Catalyst Paper versus North Cowichan District stated that a municipality can impose a greater share of the tax burden on some ratepayers than others. And the reason for doing so can include social, economic, and political factors. So close the loophole, rezone to utility. The regulated rates that BC assessment applies to linear utility properties do not apply to non-linear utility properties. Now, this would be a real problem. If we said, yeah, we're going to rezone, however, there are regulated rates there, so we're not going to get any more money. But it doesn't work that way. As a matter of fact, BC assessment does not have a non-linear designation. Let me tell you exactly what a linear designation is. BC Assessment Act, Section 21, refers to linear utility properties connected by wire, cable, or similar strand connectors. BC Land Operational Policy Definitions, page 2, defines a linear telecommunications line as uses which involve two-way data transmission by wire, cable, or similar strand connector, including fiber optics, coax, and copper cable. Well, they're talking about wired, not wireless. Okay, and the BC assessment does not have, as I say, a linear designation nowadays, not in their lexicon whatsoever. They understand, though, that there is such a thing as nonlinear. You can't have nonlinear or rather you can't have linear without nonlinear because of the unity and duality of opposites. One can only be understood in comparison with the other, in the context of the other. You don't understand what up means unless you have the opposing down. You don't understand what good is because it has no meaning for you at all unless you have the opposite bad. So what you have then is there's the understanding in BC assessment's mind or collective mind, but not in their lexicon because they never mention nonlinear. But there's no reason for them to mention it because nonlinear utility properties are in federal jurisdiction only. The wireless properties are in federal jurisdiction, not in provincial or provincial / federal, only in federal jurisdiction. As a matter of fact, if they attempted to regulate, if they attempted to come up with regulated rates, they would be guilty of attempting to regulate a federally sanctioned enterprise. The last point, and it's an interesting question, I don't have the answer to it, and I hope you do. By not rezoning when land use changes, which you haven't, and by not enacting a bylaw that allows this land use change to remain residential, which you haven't, is a municipality then not in contravention of its own land use bylaw? I don't have the answer, and I hope that you do. Roger Communications said that a few years ago, for $3 million, it would move their FM towers to another location. If Colwood had closed this bureaucratic loophole 13 years ago, we'd probably have, and of course had a separate account for the money, we could be well on our way to getting that $3 million. And I ask that we not wait another 13 years to start collecting it, rezone to utility now. One last point. Colwood City Council, in August 31st, 2009, adopted a communication antenna policy. Point 6 of that was this: land to be used for communication devices purposes will be rezoned to the highest industrial classification. Let me say it again. Land to be used for communication device purposes will be rezoned to the highest industrial classification. This was adopted by this council in August 31st, 2009. That was policy PL-900.6. Close the loophole, rezone to utility. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noble.
Good evening. My name's Josh Pish. I'm the owner of 552 Strathdee Place, one of the properties you guys are going to be discussing tonight. It's a very minor renovation in comparison to the things that are at stake tonight at the City of Colwood. I just only hope that you guys can reconsider making me tear it down. Basically, it's proper to bring it down to the proper height would entail me to take down the whole thing, or take down the whole addition that I've invested over $4,000 to build, which doesn't seem like a lot of money maybe, but it is when you're a single parent of two beautiful children there. So basically I'm just pleading with you, hoping that you can reconsider the what do you call it? Lost the word there. The recommendation to council to bring it down to 4 meters. Again, I've invested over $4,000 in good quality construction materials. I've had put a lot of work and effort into this. It's definitely not an eyesore to the neighborhood. I've had a lot of compliments on it from people in my cul-de-sac, and yeah, I would love to be able to finish it.
Okay. Any other members of the public? This is your opportunity to speak to us. Seeing none, I shall move forward. Thank you. Not a lot in the mayor's message, just a thank you to council for the many of you who attended the various Remembrance Day ceremonies in the local area here. So again, thank you. It was well attended I was at the Cenotaph in Langford, up in Veterans Park, and it was extremely well attended, and we got to stay out of the rain this year, which is even better. So anyways, moving forward, looking for the adoption of minutes of the regular meeting of council on October 28th. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Looking for receipt on planning and land use October 16th, cycling advisory October 7th, and transportation and public infrastructure on October 9th.
Move receipt.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Nothing in the way of correspondence. New business 6.1, planning and land use, development variant permit 552 Strathdee. Will that be Councillor Lukens, or are we deferring
Nope.
to
I was back
staff?
full force. Oh,
Go,
dear,
Arner.
it's wet over here. So it was explained that the applicant has applied to vary section 2.1.062A of the land use bylaw number 151 by increasing the maximum allowable height, which was just spoken to by the applicant, for an accessory building from 4 meters to 5.1 meters, and by reducing the minimum allowable side yard setback requirement from 1 meter to 0.8 meters in order to legitimize a loft addition to an existing accessory building. The applicant had explained that he built the area above the existing shed to use as a storage area. He didn't consider building or purchasing a portable unit in the backyard because of the septic field. Was asked at the planning and land use if he'd considered a temporary structure, but it was not something that he was choosing to consider. We did confirm with staff that the shed, as it existed prior to the addition, was non-conforming in terms of setback, and that regulations limit the total gross floor area which can be taken up by accessory buildings, not the number of such structures on a property. So what was determined at council, and the recommendation, and I so move, is that development's variant permit number DVP 1313 be authorized for issuance, which would have the effect of varying the minimum allowable side yard setback requirement for an accessory building pursuant to section 2.1.06 2C of the land use bylaw number 151 from 1 meter to 0.8 meters on the property described as Strata Lot 2, Section 64, Esquimalt District, Strata Plan 636552, Strathdee Place, subject to the following conditions: that the owner shall remove the non-conforming overheight portion of the accessory building and ensure that the structure meets the maximum allowable height of 4 meters. No portion of the roof overhang shall be located within 450 meters of the property boundary. All construction shall meet the applicable requirements in the British Columbia Building Code. And I just want to add that as part of the conversation, we did talk about the concern of setting precedents in the community by having such structure remaining. So that's why the decision was made by committee. Thank you.
Council discussion, comments, questions? Councillor Martin?
What's the difference? Excuse me. Through the mayor to perhaps planning or somebody else. What's the difference between this and say somebody building a treehouse for their kids? Theoretically, could they not build a treehouse that's higher than 4 meters? It just popped into my mind. It was like, I mean, do we have a regulation that says something can't be built more than 4 meters high?
Through the chair, there are probably no regulations pertinent to a treehouse of very moderate size and structure. It would not require a building permit. Certainly anything that requires a building permit is subject to bylaw compliance and building code compliance.
Councillor Day?
Thanks. I just have a question. As you read out the motion, you said no portion of the roof overhang shall be located within 450 meters of the property boundary, and it looks like millimeters in the writing. It was millimeters, right?
Thank you. My
That's
apologies.
a long way away from that.
I thought so too, but I just wanted to
Still
be
got
sure.
jet lag, so I'm not seeing double all the time. Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone? Councillor Harvey? Sullivan?
I still
George?
have my identity crisis. Is it safe to assume then that the current structure is not meeting the requirements of the BC Building Code?
The applicant, I don't believe, has taken out a building permit, or if he did, it was after the fact, a building permit application, so that may be yet to be determined.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Call the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? Motion carried. Item 6.1.2, request for reduction of OCP Greenspace requirements at 3476 Wishart Road.
So the Director of Planning informed the members that the applicant submitted a letter on behalf of the owners expressing their concern that the OCP requirement of 40% of the land for public and private open space upon development is deterring the sale of this property. There's approximately 2.529 hectares of the land that has already been acquired from the original 10.118 hectares over the years for various infrastructure improvements, including the CRD reservoir and road dedication for Veterans Memorial Parkway. And they're proposing, in an effort to satisfy the current OCP policy of 40%, that a relaxation of the open space requirement to 20%, which when combined with prior land that has been taken, could be said to satisfy the current OCP policy. Apparently the property is listed significantly below the 2010 appraised market value, according to the applicant's spokesperson. The owners have not been able to finalize the sale because apparently once potential purchasers find out about the requirement to satisfy the current policy, they withdraw their offer. He did state that there's no consideration being given to access to lands beyond when adjacent developments have happened, and this has devalued the property. It was discussed and it was shown on maps that there is access to the property in at least two different locations that the roads would be built through on. The owner, there was some public participation, particularly expressing to preserve the requirement of 40% of the green space. We as the members recognize that the lands were expropriated by the CRD in the province and not by the city of Colwood, and so we didn't really play a part in this. And it was occurred long before the OCP was adopted in 2008. It was explained that the previous land appropriations are derived from legislative requirements and are not simply the result of an owner exercising their civic duty, which they tried to explain. Also, they should have been compensated at fair market value at the time, which doesn't necessarily equate to fair market value today. They did state that they only received about $150,000 for a parcel of land back in the day, but that's what the value of the land was. It's maybe not the same as today. We as the committee felt it was premature, and we agreed that we would prefer to have a development application submitted before consideration of exclusion of the land was even considered. So it was moved, and I recommended that the request to reduce the open space requirement in policy 3.12.2 of the Fish Community Plan below 40% of the property be denied.
Conversation, questions, council? Councillor Day?
I'll just throw my words of support into the community, the committee, because I really feel that it is important to see the whole picture before we make any decisions in terms of what the requirements are going to be, and certainly wouldn't want to prejudge any situation for any development, this one or any other.
I just want to add that we also discussed that anyone who's considering purchasing, that we as the city, and I know the planning department was very open to having them to come and discuss their plans and bring a proposal to us so that we could work with them to find success and creativity in it. So we're very open to business, and we're open to working with developers that want to, consider this land as a opportunity.
Seeing no other questions, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Moving onward then to 6.1.3, Development Variance Permit DVP 0913 at 131 Lagoon Road.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was explained that the applicant has applied to vary Section 5.6.054 of the Land Use Bylaw number 151 to increase the maximum allowable floor area ratio from 0.4 to 0.57 in order to accommodate a building addition to the existing dwelling on Lagoon Road. It's noted by the committee that in 2005, a building permit was issued for a structure with a floor area ratio of 0.55. It was further acknowledged that in September 2013, the owner of the property demolished the older northerly portion of the dwelling, resulting in the remaining building enclosing a total of approximately 249.3 meters squared, which equates to a floor area ratio of 0.41. There was a survey plan provided indicating that the proposed addition is lower than what is permitted. The owner did apologize for any problems that have happened because of the previous addition and asked that the neighboring property owners and committee support this application. There were neighbors in the audience at the committee meeting that were opposed to this application due to some of the challenges that have happened previously. Staff have confirmed that a provision can be included in the permit restricting the construction of the addition to what is shown in the plan, and agreed that staff will closely monitor the construction of the addition. And it's understood that if any alterations are made, the owner will be required to apply for a new development variance permit application. And I can say that after the meeting, I had a number of conversations with neighbors from that area, Lanai and Lagoon, and I know that there is a notice here or an email that we received later today in opposition, but they were quite pleased with the outcome of the committee meeting and the consideration that was given for confirmation that they can count on the city to ensure that what is said is going to be built is going to get built. So I have confidence in that will happen based on the addition we made. So then it be recommended to council, and I so move that a DVP 0913 be authorized for issuance, which would have the effect of varying the maximum allowable floor area ratio requirement for a residential building in the residential 1R1 zone pursuant to section 5.6.054 of the Land Use Bylaw number 151 from 0.4 to 0.55 to allow for a building addition on the property described as Lot 2, Section 7, Esquimalt District Plan 16757-131 Lagoon Road. Number 2, that the construction of the proposed addition be substantially compliant with the plan for the renovation as contained in the application, except, that shouldn't be save, it should say except for changes to decrease floor area ratio to 0.55. And number 3, that if any alterations are made during construction, that the owner will be required to submit a new development variance permit application.
Just before we step into that, clarification again, Councillor Lukens, on the change in that?
Yeah, what was the initial was 1 and 2, and we added item number 3 as just assurance that
No, but you said there was something to do with accept? The
Oh,
wording?
sorry. It's just a word.
Save?
Can you save them?
Yeah, sure. It just didn't make
Just making
sense
sure
to me.
that we're keeping it correct for all future
Yep.
looking at it. We have a mover and a seconder looking to have any conversation, questions? Councillor Martin?
I'm not normally supportive of this, and I wouldn't be supportive of it except for the extenuating circumstances, so I will be supporting it today. However, I would like to see a finite date on when the construction is complete, and I don't know if we can request that. And I'll look through to staff.
That could be, through the chair, that could be an additional condition stipulated relative to the variance.
Would I make that as a friendly amendment or as a addition? Oh, okay, I'll make a motion. I will make a motion that from 9 months of the issuing of the permit, that construction will be completed. I don't know, is 9 months fair? Is 9 months fair? 9 months is a long time.
Likely tight. We don't know the complete circumstances
All
of the
right.
owner.
Give him a year. How about a year? Does a year sound fair? Does a year sound fair?
Do we have,
Looking to the
is
garden.
the applicant here?
He says 6 months. He says 6 months, so 9 months is really fair. All right, 12 months. Yes? No? 1 year. What happened to 6 months? All right, we'll go 1 year.
I can push it, but I stick with my plan.
All right.
I'll second the motion for a 1-year timeframe.
Any comments, questions on that part? Call the question on that motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. So then the full amended motion then will have the 4 parts to it. Call the question on that one. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. You don't? 6.1.4, report. Director of Planning, if you will, please, in regards to bylaw amendment to regulate medicinal marijuana production facilities.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That one doesn't work.
We're faced with changes in federal legislation which will see licensing for commercial facilities, commercial production facilities for medical marijuana in the not too distant future. And given that the federal government has stated that municipal bylaws will be honored, then it behooves us to make sure that we have regulations in place, or at least a bylaw started to that effect. Reference is made in the report to taking advantage of Section 929 of the Local Government Act, which enables a municipality, provided that it has commenced preparation of a bylaw that may be in conflict with business licenses or building permits, would enable them to withhold the issuance of building permits or business licenses until the bylaw that is in conflict can be adopted. So it's a situation where we're anticipating there are going to be applications for licenses, maybe building permits as well for facilities, for production facilities, because the production must take place within 4 walls and not outside. We would like to initiate or suggest that Council initiate the first step and direct staff to prepare a bylaw. And you'll note that the resolution is very neutral, because at this point in time we don't know enough to bring forward positive or negative regulations. Certainly that will be forthcoming in a future staff report, but at least with the council resolution directing staff to prepare a bylaw, we can be said to have a bylaw in preparation. And that then enables us to trigger 929, Section 929 if needed.
Thank you. We have a motion, recommendation within our report.
Second.
Comments, questions from council at this time? Councillor Day?
So I'll just wait in a little bit. I think they want to grow it all in Metchosin anyways, but I also just want to say that medical marijuana certainly is important, and I don't want to be seen as trying to develop something that's going to be used as a tool to keep that or make that unattainable. But I also do think that there certainly are a lot of concerns where grow-ups have taken place in regards to the safety of our firefighters and the safety of future occupants of the same buildings as well. So I'm voting for the recommendation on the basis of that I want to be sure that we do everything possible to keep everyone safe and knowing what they're getting into wherever they may choose to live.
Councillor Harvey? Solomon? Change your name.
I did. Oh. I'll have to put a staff request in for a name change.
It's not official.
I'd like to, just say that, I have a lot of compassion for those of us in society who actually require medical marijuana for pain relief and health reasons. But I also want to say that I have very little compassion for folks who choose to use these medical marijuana grow-up licenses to actually abuse the system. And so whatever regulation or whatever bylaw amendments we are anticipating or contemplating, I'd like to actually see some teeth into it with respect to penalties and having the city have the ability to shut these guys down if it's proven that they're actually abusing the system. Thank you.
Well, I know that we have experienced within the community a situation, and often these private users licensing, those people that hold it don't own the properties that they, build their farms in, if you will. And I know we have suffered in the community where we have lost a resident who did own his home and occupy his home to a neighbor who did not, but had a license and couldn't get any satisfaction, any consideration, any support along the way. So I think it's important that we take these steps to, create some structure about what's allowed and not allowed. So I'm all for it. Call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Transportation and public infrastructure, 6.2.1, speed signage on Heatherbell Road.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an item that's been... Oh, is that better? It's an item that's been bugging residents down on the lower part of Heatherbell Road for quite some time. And so we gave them an opportunity to come to Transportation Public Infrastructure to talk about their concerns and have a chance to discuss what might be done. There have been for some time concerns about cars speeding down Heatherbell Road and concern from the folks down there about the safety of people walking along there and cyclists and cats getting killed and other such sad stuff. So there was a lot of discussion at committee, various different ideas put forward in terms of slowing the traffic, talking about, putting up speed limit signs. Should we do 4-way stops or 3-way stops? Should we do, roundabout speed humps, traffic signage and all other kind of manner of things? It was noted that there is likely to be development happening in there over the next little while, and so perhaps in the kind of medium to long term there would be opportunities to do other kinds of traffic calming. But in the end, committee decided that a speed limit reduction was probably the best way to go, along with the use of the speed reader board for now. So it was recommended by committee, and I so move that the speed limit be reduced to 40 kilometres an hour for the entire length of Heatherbell Road, and using a phased-in process with signage and the speed reader board following the speed zone change, that a communication be sent to the approving officer suggesting that in the event of a subdivision or other development approval in the Lagoon neighbourhood that will increase traffic on Heatherbell Road, that it may be made a condition of the development that traffic calming be provided on Heatherbell Road with the intent of decreasing the median speed to 30 kilometres an hour through that traffic calming.
Seconder?
Second.
Conversation, comments? Councillor Martin?
I got to go first. Excellent. I'm not going to support this motion, and the reason I'm not going to support it is I'm going to be making a recommendation after this one, if this one does not pass, that we actually look at putting stop signs at Portsmouth and Heatherbell. The problem in my estimation is that Heatherbell's it's a hill, and it's a very steep hill, and you just end up accelerating just naturally going down that hill. If you have a stop sign at Portsmouth, it forces you to brake. You can put up a 40-kilometer-an-hour sign, and that's still not going to slow people down. People are still going to go the same speed. And I've spoken to a fair amount of people on Portsmouth who would be very much in favor of us putting stop signs there. It doesn't seem to me like there would be an additional cost on if we put stop signs versus putting a couple 40-kilometer-an-hour signs on the road. I think if you try and reduce the speed on that road, there's going to be an expectation of that community that we enforce that speed then, which means we're going to have to try and get RCMP down there, which is going to be a big waste of time because the road's not that busy. The issue really is that there's people going into Coast Collective, and they don't realize it's a quiet neighborhood as well, and so they just accidentally accelerate down a steep hill and then just takes them right into Coast Collective. So I just don't think that this is the way to meet that need, personally.
Others? Councillor Townsend?
Just in response to Councillor Martin's comment, it was an item that was discussed with the folks who were in the audience quite extensively at committee. A couple of things were pointed out about the challenges of the three-way stop. One is that it actually increases noise for the residents because you've got people coming to a stop and then moving forward again, so you get the additional noise happening. The other item that was pointed out by our engineers is that the problem with the three-way stop, particularly in those kind of circumstances, is that they often don't work because everybody gets, where you've got very light traffic like that, everybody gets used to the fact that, oh, well, there isn't anybody coming in the other direction. So you will kind of start to kind of roll through, and that's when you start to get the accidents happening. So it was discussed at committee, and it was quite deliberately rejected for those reasons. Just sharing.
Councillor Lukens?
Thank you, even though I had my hand up first. I'm reluctant to see any changes there at this point in time. I think speed, well, not that I think, I know speed is an issue, and I know I'm guilty of it probably as well going down the hill, although I have to brake much sooner than Councillor Martin does.
I don't brake.
But I really think that the challenge in our province is that our fines for speeding are not high enough. I just returned from Denmark, and for going over 5 kilometers over the speed limit, it starts at 550 Canadian dollars for a speeding ticket. If you are parked in a parking lot and you go over your time limit, it starts at $110 for a parking ticket. So I think when you start to hit people in the pocket, you start to get change, unfortunately. But with knowing that development is going to be happening down there at Ocean Grove and potentially the property on Seafield, I'm reluctant to see anything happen too quickly that is going to see it change anyways. But that's my opinion.
Anyone else? Councillor Day and then Logan?
Thanks. Just on the notion that the stop sign would solve a whole lot of things, it's so tempting. But I was just, the stop signs were put in at Latoria Road and Veterans Memorial Parkway. And there's still people not stopping at those stop signs because they don't believe in them or they didn't think they should be there. Latoria is the straight road. Why'd they put a stop sign on it? You know, that's their feeling. Got musical interludes. And I think that it's very hard to enforce a lowered speed limit. And I don't think putting up the signs is going to make everyone behave appropriately. We've seen that on Carindale. We actually put the speed limit down to 30 kilometers an hour there because of kids and close proximity to the route to school, and lots of people get tickets there. I've heard stories from lots of people who've been ticketed going up the hill, but it's very difficult. It seems very unnatural to drive 30 kilometers an hour down a hill where you have to be on the brakes all the time to go that speed. So I think that in the long term, probably doing something when a subdivision comes in is probably a good idea to put in some plantings, some medians to make it look like it's a place for more than just automobiles is important. And so I can support reducing it to 40 kilometers per hour because that's the same thing we've done for Esquimalt Lagoon, and I think that was a good move. Good for the lagoon, but it is certainly not going to stop everyone. And there's certainly lots of people going faster than that still on the lagoon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Lukens actually, I think, hit the nail on the head, quite frankly. If you make it a disincentive or an incentive not to speed, then certainly hitting somebody in the pocketbook significantly certainly does have an effect. And I was leery at the committee to support a reduction in the speed limit because it sets up an unrealistic expectation that there's going to be enforcement. The initial recommendation was 30K, and the compromise ended up being 40, which is still reasonable. But the experience that we've had in the past with traffic calming with reducing the speed limit hasn't been successful. And so we need to think more of an engineering solution to force people to slow down. And notwithstanding the amount of traffic in the area, at least a three-way stop, which I was a supporter of at the meeting, slows them down. Much the same as it does slow them down, at least at VMP and Latoria. They may not stop completely, but they at least achieve the goal that the neighborhood is looking for, and that's to slow the traffic down. I'm concerned if we do wait to do anything, then it's all dependent on one development supplying the funds. That's assuming that the approving officer requires any traffic calming measures to occur as a result. But we're still waiting for that to happen, and we don't know when or if that's going to happen. Meanwhile, the neighborhood continues to suffer as it grows, and yet sees that the city isn't hearing them. And so, I think there's an opportunity to move with this motion, but also if Councillor Martin wanted to make an amendment to add the three-way stop, I'd certainly be supportive. But it at least would retain the integrity of suggesting gently to the approving officer that certain measures be taken when development occurs in the area. Thanks.
Councillor Lukens again?
I may not be able to sleep tonight after I say this, but shoot me.
This isn't going to be good. Bang.
I think I can't support a stop sign there because I don't think it's realistic. But I do think there needs to be some traffic calming along Heather Bell. And I'm going to go back to Denmark because I've spent so much time there, it feels like home these days. On a secondary road through every community that you pass, and I must say that there's one about every 8 to 10 kilometers, each of those towns is allowed to put in a traffic calming through their cities. So some of them have put in speed humps, not bumps, but the bigger humps. And they've done it so, you only one vehicle can pass at a time. Some of them have done it so that you have to go through an S. So it truly makes you slow down, and it controls the speed that you're going and how much traffic is going and how fast and that sort of thing. I think that is much more realistic to do the job that we want to do as opposed to putting in a stop sign or putting up more speed signs. But I understand that probably takes more dollars and it's going to take longer to implement. But I'm just saying that on those side roads and stuff, I think we need to be more creative about how we approach slowing people down, because we know with the RCMP, and I don't expect them to go and sit there every day and give somebody a ticket. And I do know that the provincial government is looking at significantly bumping up the price we're paying for fines and that sort of thing, because they do realize, once again, Europe's 50 years ahead of us, that it does impact people and it changes behavior. So I will try and sleep tonight.
You and your socialist state.
Councillor Culling, did you have another comment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think all of us are saying that really the right way of doing this is to design the road properly so that it slows people down, and that's clearly where we want to go to when that development happens, when we've got the dollars from that going on to make it happen. What committee was simply trying to do was to be responsive to the concerns of the citizens, and also to kind of do something that helped, that was within our budget. And so obviously sort of part of the recommendation also talks about use of the speed reader board, which is just kind of a nice information piece, remind people. It was quite interesting that when we asked the residents about, the speeders, it actually became obvious that one or two of the main culprits actually came from within the neighbourhood itself. So they're all going to be phoning Councillor Logan now to every time the the particular offender goes speeding up the.
And I already have 2 of their license plates.
The road. So it was intended to be a low-cost interim solution rather than the panacea and everything that we might want it to be down the road.
Anyone else? I'll just say that we've got other areas in this community that I think are at much higher risk. With the residencies, we had calls on Halloween night on a particular instance on a road that borders the park, which should have its own regulations. Steep driveways that access onto a curved road. And, those folks haven't been able to get any satisfaction on reduction of speed in their area. So I think this is a bigger look around the community. We are addressing transportation in that plan, and Urban Systems is looking at these things. So this might be an interim, but I wouldn't expect it to be, if it passes, the ultimate answer to things. We have no sidewalks down that road. We have no limited lighting down that road. I think there's some greater safety factors that impact and create the problem that are there, as well as it has been said with the slope of the hill and just natural descension as you're going through. So that's my end of things. Councillor Martin.
I'm gonna go back and I do want to say a couple of things, and I'm not disputing at all what Councillor Cullington has said, because I agree that Councillor Lukens drives far too fast on Heatherbell. But the issue, and I want Council to be thinking about this and think this through truthfully too, because one of the issues is with Heatherbell is that the major offenders are 2 groups of people. The people who go to the bed and breakfasts at the end of Portsmouth, and the people who go to Coast Collective, because they don't realize what kind of neighborhood that is, and that they go quite fast. Any resident that goes, I've seen it in the summertime, the neighborhood does police itself, and I do see people yelling at each other to slow down, and they'll walk down 3 doors down and say, hey, you're driving too fast. If we do not address this in some sort of way, what happens is that begins to become a very negative aspect. People don't like Coast Collective because, we've got people whipping in and out, and they're going, well, that's not a good thing anymore. That's not a positive for Colwood. And we're not happy with the bed and breakfasts because all these people from Washington State are flying in and driving all over through the neighborhood, not realizing this has a lot of young children in it. I don't think the sign itself addresses the issue. I think if we want people to slow down, the stop sign may cause more noise, but I'd rather cause more noise and actually have vehicles come to a dead stop and then accelerate again versus just seeing a sign that says 40 kilometers an hour. They don't put their foot on the brake and they just coast right into Coast Collective. And I don't think we're addressing this issue as a council if we just put up a sign, unless we're going to police it. Without any enforcement, it's not going to go anywhere. Well, I'm not, I don't mind. Deputize me, make me part of bylaw.
Oh, Deputy Rob.
We'll get you a
Oh my. You want a little star on your
Yeah, that's right.
Council Day?
Thank you. I just want to remind council that even if we put up a stop sign, we have to police it. I mean, we've already been through this at the Lagoon and had bylaw out there doing a lot of extra hours to get people to stop at the new stop sign. And this wouldn't be the only neighborhood that's come forward with these issues. I'm sure everyone who's been in the chambers or at this table has heard these issues, and if you do it in one place, more than likely there's going to be more requests come forward. think the mayor is on the money in terms of the other infrastructure that's needed for safety. And we really do have to police our neighborhoods, and we have to work with those places like Coast Collective and like the bed and breakfasts. If we know that there's a place where we could put up a sign and target, I bet you the Coast Collective could come up with the most artistic, beautiful, fabulous sign with some cute little kitties and whatnot on it, letting people know as they leave. Remember, you're in a residential neighborhood. Let's get some of our partners working on the issue creatively, and not try to create unreal expectations that, you know, every other neighborhood that has people speeding here live on a cul-de-sac off of a dead-end road and people speed. Why? I have no idea. And yes, there's been a few confrontations in the neighborhood. But I just think that, you know, we have to be very careful, because if we do it one place, we have to be ready to do it another.
Your Worship, just one thing we may recall when our MLA was speaking to us, she has signs with children on them that...
Children playing.
Yeah, so we may want to go to her office and get a few and be able to stick them along that road, you know, just to let people know. The other thing I would like to recommend maybe is that a letter is written to Coast Collective, they can post down there, and also to the bed and breakfast that we can distribute to let them know, to advise their patrons that it is a community with children and to please obey the speed. I don't know, just a couple things.
Yeah.
Dieter's not gonna.
Anyways, we have recommendation on the floor, so having discussed it throughout, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? 2, 3, 4. And who was in favor again? Just making sure. 1, 2, and 3, and 4 opposed. It fails.
I would like to make a motion that we put stop signs at Heatherbelt and Portsmouth.
Second.
Any further discussion on that motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed?
Oh, good. We won't do anything down there. That's effective government.
But I do think, you know, taking some of Councillor Lucan's comments. Mr. Engineer. Oh, no, I don't think that. I think I was just going to lead into that part, taking into consideration Councillor Lucan's comments about sending letters to those two locations that might have some, you know, contribution to the problem. Just friendly letter. It doesn't have to be written aggressively or anything along that line. And as well, I think this is not the end of the conversation. I think that we need to be looking at what that Transportation and Urban Systems Plan comes up with, you know, for all of our areas in Galwood. And definitely as that development moves forward, that we are looking for those kinds of improvements and considerations that will make it safe for the people that live there and will be living there. I have Councillor Sullivan.
Well, thank you, through the chair. I'm wondering if council might consider sending this back to committee to take a look at the options that Councillor Lukens suggested. For example, the speed, not bump, but hump, and or the S-curve. I mean, there are other ways we could try to address this issue and bring it back to council as opposed to just completely saying no.
I think that comes in the Transportation Urban Systems Plan report. And Mr. Engineer, do we know when that's coming forward? Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Logan?
Just one question. Are we going to be notifying the residents that we won't be doing anything down there? Because they left here with an expectation of some sort of action. And so they're going to be banging on the door saying, where's our sign?
I would concur with Councillor Logan, and I suggest that maybe what we do is make a formal motion to refer this back to TPI for further consideration and notify the residents.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried? Yep.
Just a suggestion, TPI, why don't they invite the Bed and Breakfast and Coast Collective to that meeting?
Coast Collective was present at our meeting the other day, but the B&B was not.
Yep, absolutely. Moving forward then to 6.2.2, proposal to establish a coastline committee to support the ballot question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This actually goes back to a decision that Council made fairly near the beginning of a mandate, where we said we wanted to include a ballot question at the next election. And at the time, our phrasing was really around what are we going to do about the bridge? I think since then, through a series of presentations and information, our conversation has really expanded to recognise that there are a number of issues along the coastline between Fort Rod Hill and the Royal Bay foreshore that we need to look at. And it includes the bridge, but it includes the shoreline erosion. It includes the need to look at the protection or relocation of the pump station and various impacts from sea level rise as it occurs. So what TPI wanted to do was to put forth a process to get us from now to the next election, which is only a year away. And so the proposal is to develop a select committee that would help take us through this process. And the purpose of that committee is not to determine what's the best way of dealing with those issues. The purpose of the committee is to discuss, participate in that kind of public education process around what the various issues are, what our various management options are, along with a kind of a ballpark of what kind of costs that would be, but really to help the city determine what's a fair question and a reasonable question and a very clear question to put out along with that next ballot. So the process would be, I believe the Mayor has the authority to appoint select committee members, but we might want to go through an advertising process. We would certainly want to invite, there have been folks who've been very interested in the whole bridge issue, who we would obviously want to invite to perhaps include representation on the committee, groups like Elsie, some of the residents down there. We might want to include some members of council, parks, finance, TPI involved in that as well. So, maybe up to even as many as 9 members. But then really to kind of take them through a process and to work with our communications director to make sure that, let's say, for example, your initial meeting is all about, what are the issues that are happening down at the bridge. So we have we make sure we're doing lots of kind of inviting public to those meetings, having a discussion about what the various issues are from the various experts in the field, having discussions around, what are those management options that are out there. And we can kind of, put the whole kind of gamut out there in terms of sort of doing absolutely nothing to doing, full-on hardening of the foreshore. And then let's have a discussion around, what are reasonable options to put out there on the table. And then bringing that back and working through a process to get us into that development of the ballot question. So it was recommended by committee, and I so move, that Council select a coastline committee of up to 9 individuals to support a public engagement process to discuss management approaches to the foreshore issues and to develop the ballot question on coastal management.
Conversation, questions, discussion by council? Councillor Lukens?
Thank you. I know that the question was very narrow when we were, just after we were elected, which you alluded to was just regarding the bridge. Can you remind me, did we not approve monies in the budget last year for a consultant to do some work with respect to the coast and the erosion and all those kinds of issues, or what was that around?
Yeah, monies were approved, but I was only directed to tackle one of the problems at this time, the pump station. And the RFP for that should be going out this week, next week. But the idea is that once that is done, we will have better estimates for the other problems, and we could look at what money's left and choose another project to do with that money, and presumably add more money to it next year.
So, Madam Chair, if I can add to that, $75,000 was approved in the budget for, first of all, protecting the pump station, an actual study to look at that and do preliminary work with the remainder of the money. $75,000 really doesn't go very far at all. That's as far as it went. There was nothing to do with shoreline erosion in the monetary amount allocated.
Councillor Day?
And since that time, there's been a considerable amount of information released by the province in regards to sea level rise and what that looks like and what the approach is that's recommended to communities. So there should be a lot of compiling information type work that could be done by citizen members of our committees who could help to gather that data together in a way that makes sense to present to the community, because there's no point in asking a question of a community that hasn't been given any of the information. So the way and I wasn't at this meeting, but the way I've read the issue, it seems to me like it would make a great deal of sense to have a prepared package of information, of which we've all heard bits and pieces. The Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities conference this year had part of it, and I can't remember, maybe it was at UBCM that I heard another part of it delivered. And it would be very nice to somehow put those two pieces together so that we could present that to our community, so that when we ask a question, they have as much information to base their answer on as we do.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, through the chair. And I just want to make sure that we have representative members of our community on this committee. And we did have some members come and make a presentation, although I wasn't here, unfortunately, to partake in that conversation. I know that they've put in a tremendous amount of work and have a lot of knowledge that they can share.
Yep. And the original report did actually mention a couple of them by name.
Thank you.
Councillor Lukens?
I also think that this is an opportunity for us to reach beyond our boundaries, because this doesn't just impact us in Colwood. I think this is an opportunity to work with our neighboring communities around the region and compile information. And it's important that we do that so that everybody is in the know of what's happening, because we're all going to be in the same boat.
CEO?
Madam Chair, if I may, I'd like to bring to Council's attention that the task that's being proposed is rather enormous in its complexity. So that's one big challenge, not only from the point of view of resources, but also of money. Secondly, Council has already identified a number of issues that it's trying to deal with. The first is protecting the pump station. And even with the $75,000, that's not going to go far enough. The other one is keeping the bridge open for as long as we can, regardless of what the January 12th, 2012 motion said, which was the motion to close the bridge. That was the referendum. That's the referendum question at the moment. And I think from a staff point of view, I think that's the wrong way to go. We've already made a decision based on what? I think it's too early for that kind of thing. Second is a referendum question still does not ask the silent majority what they think. All we get are the people that are very keen on participating in municipal elections. It's the same good people, but we're still, the majority of the population's not saying anything at all. So the way we can get around that is to create a statistically significant survey that is done based on making sure that we get a good cross section of the population, not done on the internet or anything like that, but actually surveyed, done by telephone. So you actually get some solid information in terms of what the public thinks. The other whole part of it is the referendum will cost us some money. First of all, we have to do a lot of research. Then we have to put all the information into brochure form, and we've got to inform the public. That takes time, that takes money. Not only that, a referendum has to be put on a totally separate ballot than the ballot for electing representatives. And every question that's put on has to be a separate question on a separate ballot. So it means us having to get another machine to be able to actually do it. Those are just some of the issues. So I think in terms that council has already sort of formulated an immediate response, because we only have a certain amount of money that can be brought to bear. And the first one that was identified is the pump station. That creates the greatest liability for the city right now if anything happens to that. The next is keeping the bridge open for as long as we can, which might be 50 years. It could be, for all I know, 100 years. I have no idea. But the bridge generally is in relatively good condition. It just needs to make sure that council is given the right information that's coming forward from the process the engineers put together, and from that there'll be money allocation of where the money should be spent on the bridge. So I think this is a question that it's much larger than it looks on paper. It's a lot of work, and are we still going to get to enough of our property owners to make it valid?
Further comments or questions from council? Councillor Collington?
Through you, just to clarify a couple of the comments from the CAO. Chris, are you suggesting that we do a statistically valid survey instead of doing a ballot question?
Through the chair to Councillor Cullington, the idea is that myself and the communications officer have been working on what's called a community survey, and it's based on some information that other municipalities use, constant questions that can be asked every second year to see if there are any shifts in trends. But part of the survey is also, what are the issues of the day? The issues of the day are the lagoon. That could be part of it. And the advantage here is that we never hear from the majority of the property owners of Colwood. And this way, we would hear something from them based on a survey.
I think I'm certainly not opposed to the idea, except for the fact that I think even if we go that route, it's really important that there's a lot of education that needs to happen in behind that, because there's a lot of opinion out there. But I think a lot of it doesn't necessarily kind of have the most current and up-to-date information. So I think, you know, even if we're going to ask that question through a survey, I still think we need to do the work as a community to make sure our citizens have good information. And I mean, you know, one of the, I'm certainly not trying to kind of prejudge what the question might be, but you know, somewhere along the line, somebody said, you know, really the question out there is to our public, you know, do you want to see your taxes rise $10 a door, and then we'll do whatever we can do to kind of keep the lagoon going as long as we can with that kind of budget, or do you want to see your taxes raise $100 a door, and we'll do all the things that we can within that budget to make that happen. So I still think we really need to kind of you know, I think this is an important question that is out there, and I think it's an important enough question that we really need to do a good job of asking our community how they would like us to move forward on this. You know, it's not an easy decision. We know the community is divided. We know there are lots of different opinions out there. How do we do, and I would certainly welcome Sandra's input on this, how do we do the best job that we possibly can of doing that public education engagement piece and really getting good feedback on the kind of the pulse of the community, if you will.
Councillor Sullivan, Day and Logan.
Thank you, through the chair. I think I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Cullington in that we need to do some public education, but I would want to caution council that we don't want to directly correlate anything we do with the lagoon in that area with an increase in taxes necessarily. I think that, you know, our residents may in fact ask us to prioritize things within the city so that we don't have to increase taxes as best we can. So I just want to caution council that it's not a direct correlation there.
Councillor Day?
Thank you. And I just want to say that I think the education component is vital, and it is important to more than just our community. I think that was a absolutely important point. All of the slides that I've seen about sea level rise show the inner harbor in Victoria and the seawall with all their businesses built up around it, and it's going to look very different 10, 20 years from now with all the predictions that we're getting from the province. So they are going to have to deal with it, and it would be very nice for our residents to be able to bring them the latest information, because they're not getting it from anywhere else. And they're certainly not getting anything that's geared towards what's going to happen at the lagoon and what's going to happen to our waterfront here.
Councillor Logan?
Thank you, Worship. Chris actually makes a very, very good, compelling argument as to an alternative approach to this whole question. And Michael brought his first report a number of years ago, and I think since then we're still trying to get our head wrapped around it, and what type of direction we're looking at going. And we haven't been able to do that. And to say that we're going to have a better idea in a year, thanks to through committee, I think is probably a bit wishful thinking, and one optimistic perhaps, but I want to make sure that we take care that we don't rush the issue and we do the public engagement in a thoughtful manner. A year seems like a long time, but when you pair that up with all the other priorities, it makes it challenging. And I'm not sure that we necessarily have that capacity at the moment to be able to get all that work done in a thoughtful manner that's presentable. And Chris brings a fantastic point about, you know, there's only a select few that, unfortunately, that show up to vote. And so if we had a thoughtful approach in terms of surveys and did spend a little bit of money in trying to get that message out, that might be a better way in terms of, you know, taking our time. I think when we made that decision to move forward with a ballot question, it was done with the greatest intentions, and that we were hoping to get have some more direction or idea of where we wanted to go before all these other priorities started to infiltrate our agenda, so to speak. So I think the formation of a coastline committee is a good idea to help us move into a direction in terms of formulating the outreach, but perhaps knocking off the last half in terms of the ballot question would be in order to allow us some flexibility. Thanks.
Councillor Lugans?
I just want to ask for clarification purposes then, because it's something I was going to ask you yourself, Your Worship, is about the ballot question that we had committed to in 2012 about the bridge. I personally don't think that that's any longer, to be honest with you, relevant as it stands today based on the conversation we're having, and it ties into a bigger picture. And if that needs to be rescinded,
You've been reading on my screen, haven't you?
Oh, sorry. But
No, and I
I
mean
just
that-
want to make sure we don't miss
Yeah.
that step, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden we get to the election next year. And I really think that was driven from the election and all of the hoopla around that. And, you know, as we've had a few years under our belt, I think we've all gotten to, or I know I have gotten to, understand it a lot better, and it's a lot bigger picture than just the bridge.
Yes or no? Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally concur with you, Councillor Lukens, and it is on my notes here, you know, to ask, do we need to be rescinding that motion from January 2012 at this time? Or is it something that can be done in the future, you know, in conjunction with the information gathering and the result of things, should this motion pass in some form along the way? It's identified in my notes here, but now that it's been brought up, I'll ask.
I mean, my voice isn't loud enough. Madam Chair, I think it's one of those issues that I think it was made right at the beginning of this council's term, and it was very, very narrow. And I think that's part of the problem, because what the public perceives, some of them will perceive it, oh, good, the bridge is going to be closed. I would think the majority of the population says, we don't want that. So my thoughts would be, take it off the books, and then you can reconstitute it possibly after the research that's been done by this group. And it might be this year, it might not be.
And will we do that rescinding of that previous motion at this meeting, or could we do it in our next council meeting where we'd have the proper reporting information so that we know exactly what we're rescinding?
That's a good idea. We can put it on the next council agenda as a motion to be rescinded, and then this council can make its decision at that time.
Okay. Councillor Collington.
Thank you. I'm very happy with the idea of rescinding the motion. I mean, the notion around the Coastline Committee was based on, we're going to have this ballot question, we'd better be prepared for it. If everybody's comfortable, and that's what I'm hearing around the table, of doing away with the ballot question, I think now we flow into a much more reasonable process. And so actually what I would like to do is not necessarily even go back to our communications director and say, you know, let's have a bit more conversation around, is the Coastline Committee the best way to do, you know, the kind of other forms of doing this. So maybe we want to kind of refer this whole thing to the next council meeting for further discussion.
Councillor Date.
I'm just wondering if there isn't still a need to have, and maybe this is not the meeting that decision will be made, but I wonder if there isn't still a need for a coastline committee to help to develop public education materials about sea level rise and what the implications are for Colwood, because there is some definitive work that's not new work that's to be commissioned, but simply gathering the information that's already been produced by the province to look at that issue and bring together the facts that we know so that they can be presented to the community.
I don't disagree, and I think, you know, if we go through with, as Councillor Collington has said, is to refer this to the next council meeting, would give us some opportunity to have Sandra perhaps prepare a report around some of the strategic direction that she was looking at in regards to getting information from our community and that sort of thing.
I would move that we refer this item to the next council committee and seek further input from staff.
Second.
Before we call that question, do we have to vote on the first one that's on the floor? Or can we?
No, motion to refer is always in order. It takes precedence.
It takes precedence on it?
Well, I think what you've got already got a motion on the floor, because you've got a primary and a seconder.
Yeah, we have them, like,
Point of order, the motion to refer always takes precedence.
yeah. So we're good on that one then? I can go with that one. So call the question on the motion to refer. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried? Pat's got it. And that brings us to item number 7.1, Colwood Land Use Bylaw number 151, 1989, amendment number 134. There are some revisions that were done in this, and I'm going to ask our Director of Planning to make that explanation so that it's clear in all the minds and for Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This particular bylaw had been the subject of a couple of meetings. In a meeting on October 15th, the council directed staff to include specific provisions for parking. And unfortunately, when the bylaw came forward for first and second readings, those were missing in the version that went forward on October 28th. Also missing was a reference to amenity contributions. So staff are asking for second reading given on the 28th to be rescinded, the bylaw be amended and given second reading as amended.
Is we have to rescind the second, then you have to make a motion to amend the bylaw, and then you give second reading to the amended bylaw.
That's right.
Move that we rescind second reading?
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Motion to
Move second reading as
amend.
amended?
All those in favor? Any further conversation or whatever on that one? Call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. And that concludes council meeting for this evening. Looking for a motion to adjourn?
No.
Oh, back in camera, pardon me. Hey, you.
I was wondering if you're actually...
Yeah, come on. It's not 8:30 yet.
Motion to move back into camera?
All those in favor? Adjourn. We got more to talk. Thanks, Dwayne.
Good to see you.
Where's our cookies?
Yeah.
All right, punch this. Chris Core. And I forget the first name. I forget. My key phone's off just for.